It's a little funny how the same chord can be written in different ways, and then all these extra symbols and numbers can add to the confusion. So today I'm going to explain every single chord symbol so you can understand any chord you see, and I'll show you each chord on guitar. Let's start with the simplest chord notation, a single letter. We always assume a major triad when you see only the letter, in this case D major. Sometimes you might see MAJ spelled out next to the letter to further clarify that it's a major triad. But this is usually quite rare, because honestly, who's got time to write an extra 3 letters? Now when there's a lowercase m next to the letter, this means that it is a minor triad. This would be D minor. And actually the m being lowercase is a bit important because oftentimes an uppercase m next to a chord will mean major. Of course, you could always see the letters MIN written next to the letters similar to MAJ. But there is one other symbol you'll see if you are ever dealing with those pesky jazz musicians. One glance at the real book will introduce a whole new world of symbols, and for minor, they use a simple dash. So D minor could be written like this. If you see DIM next to a chord, that is short for diminished, so this symbol means to play a D diminished triad. You could also write the same thing with a little circle like a degree symbol. The last of our proper triads would be the augmented triad written like this. This also has a shorter symbol, which is simply a plus sign. That somehow implies to me the meaning of augmented, which is a raised or sharpened fifth interval. Occasionally you could see a plus sign substituted for a simple sharp sign. Sus is short for suspect if you're trying to get hip to the Gen Z slang, but in music, sus is short for suspended. You could either have a sus4, which means the 4th degree is replacing the 3rd, or a sus2, which means the 2nd degree is replacing the 3rd, giving the chord a not so grounded feeling. If a chord just says sus, it is likely implying a sus4, but the most important thing here is to know that sus or suspended means that there is no 3rd. The chord is neither major or minor. A7 next to the letter means a dominant 7th chord. We basically never say dominant 7 unless we're really analyzing the chords. In a normal musical setting, we just say D7. To make that a minor 7, we could use any of the minor symbols like M, MIN, or a dash, and then 7 right after it, and that makes D minor 7. And same thing with major 7, a capital M, MAJ, or that funny symbol those freaky jazz musicians use, a triangle. You will usually see it written with a 7 next to the triangle, but you might see only the triangle. You might even see major 7 with just MA7, or minor 7 with just MI7, but I'm sure you could have figured that out on your own. Check out this chord. I know what you're thinking. Minor and major are polar opposites. How can they possibly fit in one chord? Basically, this symbol means to play a minor triad with a major 7 on top. That's D minor plus C sharp. D minor, major 7. Diminished 7 is actually different from a diminished triad because this is 4 notes instead of 3, but you could see it written similarly with the degree sign and a 7 next to it. If you see a little slash through the circle, watch out. This is a different chord. This would be a half diminished 7th chord. Instead of a stack of minor thirds like a full diminished chord, the half diminished chord is a diminished triad with a minor 7 on top. In jazz, you would more likely see this exact same chord written as D minor 7 flat 5, which is typically the 2 chord in a minor key. Now let's talk about extensions. Above 7, the only numbers you'll see are 9, 11, and 13. The 9th note in the key of D is E, but you're probably wondering why count to 9 when E is literally the 2nd note in the scale. Any number above 7 implies a 7th, so D9 would be a D7 chord with a 9 on top. D11 would be a D7 chord with an 11 on top, and you could include a 9 too if no one's looking. But actually, this chord is unusual and kind of bad sounding, so you would more likely play a D7 sus4 since 4 is the same as 11. D13 technically has all of these notes in it, which is why when we get to more advanced chords like this, you may simplify and play only the important notes, which is basically a shell chord. D7 shell chord is 1, 3, flat 7, because the 5 doesn't define the chord in any way, so we could take that out. That leaves adding a 13 to give the minimum amount of notes to play a D13 chord. D add 9 is a funny little one that doesn't follow the rules, because it's just a D triad with a 9th interval, no 7th. But that's okay, because we just know that. After extensions, the other numbers you'll see are altered chords. These are typically flat 5, sharp 5, flat 9, sharp 9. D7 sharp 9, commonly known as the Jimi Hendrix chord, is exactly what is written. A D7 chord with a sharp 9 added to it. D7 flat 9 would look like this, and here's the other two. You might see a flat 13, but that's the same note as a sharp 5, so that's cool. Sometimes a chord chart just wants you to go crazy and write D alt or D alt 7, which means any altered chord. Play that crazy dissonant goodness however you want so we can resolve sweetly to the next chord. Oh yeah, you might get multiple altered notes separated by a comma like this. Extensions work the same for our minor 7 and major 7 chords, 9, 11, and 13. D minor 9 means a minor 7 chord with a 9 written any of these ways. D major 9 is a D major 7 chord with a 9 written in any of these ways. D5 means just the root in the 5th, which is mostly known as a power chord. D6 is actually a full triad with the 6th interval added. Are you getting how all of these numbers refer to the scale numbers or intervals in a key signature? D minor 6 is a bit tricky because the 6th degree in D minor is B flat, but we always refer to the major scale, so we actually play D minor with a B. It actually sounds nicer. However, on guitar it's more practical to play a D minor 13. It's just easier. What's D6-9? Yeah, you know by now. D major with a 6 and a 9 added to it. Sounds pretty. A over C sharp is a slash chord because of the slash. This means to play A major triad with a C sharp in the bass. This is actually an inversion since C sharp is in the A major chord, but not all slash chords are inversions. They are often used to suggest a specific voicing. If I saw a D7 sus, which is a D7 chord with a suspended 4, I'd probably play this, but a nicer sounding voicing would be the C over D, a C triad with a D in the bass, which basically makes up the intervals 1, flat 7, 9, 11, or 4, which sounds really just great. Now when playing with a band, slash chords don't mean much to a guitar player because a bass player always has the lowest note no matter how you arrange your chord, so you could ignore the second letter and sound pretty hip and in tune. But back to slash chords implying a voicing or the order of notes, the chord shape some might say. C minor 7 could be written as E flat over C, or maybe A major 7 could be written as C sharp minor over A. Okay, so that might not be every single possible chord, but it's the foundation of every possible chord, and from there you could fit any chord into one of these categories and understand every chord that has ever been played in the history of music. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you dig.